All right, steam on. We'll get this meeting to order. So calling the meeting to order for the regular meeting for the Lewiston Planning and Zoning Commission for June 11th at 5:30. So first on the agenda was the call to order. We've done that. Number two is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the commission with comments and or questions about planning and zoning commission related matters that are not related to the public hearing or any public hearing that we have on our agenda tonight. So somebody here for not public hearing related comments? Do we have anything email, mail, called in? All right. All right, well, that takes care of number two on our agenda. So number three on our agenda, our active agenda, is approval of our May 28th, 2025 meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look those over?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the May 28th, 2025 meeting minutes as presented.
Perfect. Is there a second? Moved and seconded to approve the May 28th, 2025 meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Is that enough?
Oh, no,
Okay.
it's not.
That's not, because that's three. abstain.
I wasn't here, so.
Same.
No, I think over.
Can we push that to the following?
I don't have to. You don't have to abstain if you
Oh.
don't.
Have you read them?
I've read them.
Read
Yeah.
them?
Well, they look
Okay.
good.
Well, and I watched the meeting online, so I will go ahead and
There
vote.
you go.
Okay, all right.
Priceless alert.
I appreciate you all being honest.
Chair, can I get another vote to see who is?
Yeah.
Kevin or Maureen? Oh, sorry. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Who's abstaining?
I didn't watch. I
Four to
read
two.
it, read it, but I
Yeah.
did not watch
Me
it.
neither.
So.
All right, so that takes care of item A on our agenda. Item B on our agenda is a public hearing and subsequent deliberation and direction to staff regarding the reason statement for conditional use permit application CUP 25-2 by Cammie Huntley of Sandcastle Kids. And this is an action item. So before I open up the public hearing, just to explain this process for everybody who may or may not be familiar with public hearings, is after the public hearing is open, I'll announce the subject of the public hearing real quick. We are asking everybody who is in support or opposition to the application to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll be flexible with that, but we will enforce it if comments start running beyond 3 minutes. So after the public hearing is opened, we'll hear a staff presentation. We will then hear testimony from the applicant. After there's been testimony from the applicant, we'll hear testimony from the public. After that's done, depending on what the testimony is, the applicant will have a chance to have a rebuttal if there's any comments in opposition or she wants to address any comments in support. During that time, we as commissioners can ask questions of staff or the applicant. Once that's done, I will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, we cannot ask any additional questions of staff or the applicant. And then once that hearing is closed, we will deliberate and discuss the relevant criteria and standards. So, and then after that, we will take a vote on whether to approve or deny the CUP and direct staff to create a reason statement. So with that, I will open up the public hearing. Go for it, Katie.
Good evening, Commission. Katie Hollingshead, Assistant Planner. Tonight, we're talking about conditional use permit applications, UP 25-2. This is a conditional use permit application by Sandcastle Kids for a daycare center in the R2A low-density residential zone. So like usual, we are going to look at some pictures and some maps and talk about some different items from the staff report. So our subject property is located at 3436 8th Street in Lewis Orchards. It is currently a single family dwelling. It does have an attached carport. So you can see dwelling here, carport here, concrete parking pad here. And then this is my vehicle. I am parked in the right of way. The applicant does currently reside in the home, but would not, should the conditional use be approved, she would move her family elsewhere and use the building solely for the daycare center use. So on a map, So property is located on 8th Street. Like I said, in the Orchards, nearest intersection is Burl Avenue. So that's down here to the south. Subject property is outlined in red here. So this is 8th. This is Burl. Centennial Elementary School is over here. It's about half a block to the east. So some photos looking up and down the street. So surrounding properties are mostly single-family dwellings. So I'm across the street from the subject property. I'm looking northwest on 8th Street. And these are some adjacent single-family dwellings on the same side as the subject property. And then looking across the street, again, a single-family dwelling. And then there's a small trailer court right here, it has just 4 units in it. Also, it's on the east side of the street. And then there's some other single family and like duplex dwellings farther north. So a larger map with our zoning layer turned on. Again, subject property is outlined in red. The subject property is located, as I said before, in our low density residential R2A zone, which is this green color. There's a little planned unit development over here in yellow. It is on 7th Street D, has these 2 little cul-de-sacs. And then to the north, starting on Airway, is our Brighton Avenue Special Planning Area B. And then farther, you can just see just the bare little piece of purple here. That's that Special Planning Area A that runs along the Brighton Avenue corridor. So speaking of the zoning currently, we also always look at our comprehensive plan. So as I stated, currently we're in our R2A zone. Subject property is located on the comprehensive plan's future land use map in what is designated as neighborhood residential, which is right here. That's that yellow color. The things that are called out specifically in that comprehensive plan for neighborhood residential is that is a low intensity, primarily residential place type that includes a variety of housing types. The identified supporting uses, or in this case, conditional uses, would be things such as open space and recreation, residential multi-unit or multifamily, mixed use, retail and restaurant, and then personal services. Childcare is on that list of items that are identified as personal services. You can see the yellow that matches the map. The dark ones are the things that are allowed by right, which would be single family and duplex dwellings. And then the ones that are gray are those supporting uses. And if they had like the circle with the line, those are not considered appropriate for the area. So in this particular area designation, that would be things like industrial uses or high intensity uses. Going back to some photos. So subject property is, like I said before, 1 house north of Burl Avenue, like I showed you on that map. And again, north of that Burl Avenue and 8th Street intersection, like I showed you on the map, Centennial Elementary School is about half a block to the east, again on Burl. And or 8th Street, sorry, 8th Street is designated as a local road and Burl Avenue is designated as a collector street in our transportation master plan. So you can see subject property is right here. My vehicle is right here. And we're going to look from the other side. So now I'm standing at the stop sign of Burl and 8th, looking north along 8th. So the 8th Street has actually a 60-foot right-of-way, but it only has a 25-foot paved surface. So like this portion over here is part of the right-of-way, and then this portion over here is also part of the right-of-way. In the staff report, as the commission knows, we do reach out to other departments within the city and sometimes outside entities, depending on the application. So for this particular application, the Public Works Department and the Engineering Division, which deals with right-of-ways, traffic, driveway approaches, things of that nature. We're given a copy of the application and asked to provide comments. So from that division, statements are that traffic impact would be minimal if approved. Current city code allows for the driveway to be increased to a total of 30 feet wide for this residential area. Currently, it's about 22-ish feet. The applicant can utilize existing roadway shoulder parking in the right-of-way parallel to the 8th Street center line, which, like I said, would be kind of this area. And you can see my vehicle parked over here. They did note, though, that the adjacent neighbors' trees and bushes that are in the right of way might need to be trimmed in order to accommodate that neighborhood parking, and so that would just be these bushes that you can see in this photo. And then also going with both in the application stated by the applicant and then stated by our fire department, who was also reached out to and requested for comments. One of the things that is being proposed, which is not something that you guys necessarily approve, but would be done through the fire and building departments, would be the addition of egress. So in this case, this window would be turned into a door to come out of the basement. So you'll see in the application from the applicant, she makes comments that that would be a change that she would be making to the house. And then fire also made a similar comment that the owner is working with fire on building and fire code compliance. So this is that back corner. This structure is a little garden shed, so this structure would go away to allow for that egress component to come out for safe exiting of the basement. And then finally, for daycare centers, there is always the special conditions that are listed in code for you guys to consider. And I did want to make a note because one of them has kind of gone away. So in chapter 37, section 20-1 is a special condition specific to daycare centers. A is a business license is required in accordance with chapter 21. So the city of Lewiston is no longer the licensing authority for daycare centers. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare is now that licensing authority. So daycares get their license from the state, not from the city. So that is one difference, and that has not been adjusted in our code as of yet. And that change was made in October of 24, I believe. So public health, our local entity, does a inspection of the site. And then they make a recommendation to Department of Health and Welfare regarding the licensure. And then the Department of Health and Welfare actually issues the licensure. The city does not issue the licensure. So this commission decides on the land use. And much like you did a couple months ago when we had the preschool come through for conditional use, the state reaches out to the city and makes sure that the property for its zoning use is in compliance, and that use can be done there either by right or through that conditional use process. So we fill out a form basically saying, yes, it's by right in whatever area they're in, or they've obtained a conditional use permit through the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then finally, we'll go back just a little bit. I wanted to talk briefly about parking. So the subject property has this concrete pad existing, and the single car carport. The concrete pad is about 23 feet wide, and like engineering commented, it could be increased in width by another 7 feet for their driveway approach, and then it's about 30 feet deep. And that just goes to that edge, which, like I stated before, is where the actual city right-of-way begins. So a standard parking stall is 9 feet by 18.5 feet. That's city standard for a standard like pull-in parking stall. And the minimum number of parking spaces for a daycare center is 2 spaces plus 1 for every employee on the maximum shift. And that's what is currently in code. And then remember that council recently passed that the minimum number of parking spaces will be 50% of that. So that would be 1 plus half a space for every employee. The applicant said she has 4 employees, so that would be 1 plus 2, so 3 required spaces. She does have, of course, room for more than that here, and does plan on adding some additional gravel space in the front yard to accommodate for additional parking and kind of just that pull-in situation for people dropping off their children. The applicant does state in her application that Her hours of operation are kind of standard for a daycare, 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. She's currently in a commercial space that is on the market to be sold. Her current space is about 900 square feet. And moving into the house, which is about 1,900 square feet with upstairs and downstairs spaces combined, would allow for, more space for the children that she cares for. Currently, she has about 20 children enrolled, and like I stated before, the 4 part-time employees. With that, that sums up my staff report, and I would stand for question.
Go for it,
Is
Kathy.
that okay?
Yeah, go.
All right, I just have a question on the map, and you might have said it, and I may have been not paying attention.
Okay.
Directly to the west of her 34, 36 8th Street is a property, and I can't see the address on it. Who owns that property?
Like this one over here or this one over?
It's that L shape, it's kind of a flag lot thing. That L shape, that looks like there's nothing there. Yeah, that's, piece right there, and it goes clear down to the road, but there's no address attached to it.
731.
Is it 731?
731 is owned by the.
731 Pearl Avenue.
Oh, okay, I can see it on my little sheet of paper. Now, is there a residence there? I guess.
Yes.
And so they just have a big backyard? I can't see it.
Yeah, you can see, so this is a residence.
Oh,
right
there it
here,
is,
And
okay.
their property looks like that.
Okay, all right, there we go.
Did you have a question, Kevin?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to think.
Oh, no, I thought I saw your hand.
Go for it.
Thank you.
So Katie, and maybe this is a question for the applicant. So the pull-in space for the parents, would that be in that little gravel section? That's the city's right of way? Or did I misunderstand? I feel like I missed that
This little
part.
gravel section right here is the city right of way. The applicant is proposing to take out a portion of this front yard area
Oh, okay.
to gravel so that there is a pull-in area.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, perfect. Do we have any other questions for? Smith?
Katie.
Actually,
I have.
Oh, well, go for it, Emily, and then Kevin.
With the right of way on the opposite side, is that the area that needs to be potentially have the bushes cleared across the street?
I think that the ones when Public Works went out and did their site visit, I think this is what they were talking about. 'Cause there's not, well, so this person also has, let's see if I have a better picture of that house. And they kind of have like that grass area, then they have some bushes right there.
So that's just same side as the house, but down the street?
This is across the street.
Across the
from
street,
house.
okay.
Okay. And this one down here, this is the same side, because this is my vehicle parked in front of the subject property, and this is the house that is on the corner between 8th and Pearl.
So in the paperwork, the packet, it stated that the house, will not be used as a place of residence, so it'll be strictly the daycare
That is my understanding, yes.
and. Okay, that's what I had.
Well, my question actually kind of comes off of Emily's question on the bushes, so. Basically, in order to affect this change appropriately, the city is going to be approaching the neighbor to trim.
I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
That would be a Public Works.
Okay.
Situation. If it's not blocking the line of sight triangle, then I don't think that they would. That's usually when they would approach a neighbor about bushes overhanging, is if it's blocking someone's ability to see.
To see, to make the corner.
Jennifer Tangano, city attorney. Under city code, if there is vegetation in the right of way, the public works department has the discretion to trim that area without the owner's consent because
Okay.
it's already encroaching on the easement area or the right of way area. So there's, if it becomes a problem, public works can trim it only to like the vertical line of where the easement area is.
Go for it, Jay.
Just to clarify, so under the daycare center for parking, so we have the two spaces plus one space for every employee. And we require 50% of that, so that would be 3. It based off of the 4 employees, but it also requires a paved, unobstructed pickup space.
That's the stacking area.
2 plus 1. Each employee is half, though.
So then
Yeah,
that
4
gravel
employees,
lot
that's
area.
So the gravel area
Yeah.
could be for
Yeah.
the employee parking and the paved area over here could be for pickup and drop off.
Go for it, Kevin.
Actually, I think this might be a question for the applicant, but as far as, I mean, parking, being affected by the amount of employees, which is affected by the amount of kids. So there's 20 kids right now, but that's with the 900 square feet location. And so are there gonna be more kids for the 1900 square feet?
That would be, but, yeah.
So I thought-
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? That's, we will hear any comments from the applicant. And you can just state your name and city of residence. You don't have to state your address if you don't
Okay.
want to.
I'm Tammy Cumming and I live in Lewiston, Idaho. I'm also the director and owner of Sandcastle Kids, a licensed daycare currently serving families here in Lewiston. I am here today to respectfully request a conditional use permit to relocate our daycare to 3436 8th Street. Sandcastle Kids has been part of the Lewiston community for 14 years, providing safe, nurturing, and educational environment for young children. We focus on early childhood development, school readiness, and building strong relationships with our local families. We are seeking a new space due to our current location being sold. We have identified 3436 8th Street as a suitable location because it meets the safety and space requirements essential to our operations, and it offers a quiet neighborhood setting that is ideal for child development. The home is well suited for childcare use, and we will make any necessary updates to meet licensing standards, including child proofing, fencing for outdoor play, and sufficient parking and for drop off and pickup. We understand and respect the zoning regulations are in place to protect the character and function of neighborhoods, and we want to be good neighbors. Our hours of operation are 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We expect modest traffic flow, being a small center of 8 to 14 cars per day at staggered times. This is significantly less than what is seen at a school or public facility. We will ask families to be courteous and mindful of neighborhood driveways and to avoid street congestion. A written parking policy we shared with all enrolled families. The home includes off-street parking for 6 vehicles, and we plan to expand that. Our current location has 3 parking spots, and we're able to avoid congestion with our staggered drop-off and pickup. Normally, we only have 2 staff on at a time because of our numbers. So there would be 2 staff at a time, just so you guys have an idea of parking. There was a neighbor that was concerned about children walking. We only accept school-age children in the summer, so children will not be walking to and from this facility. All children will be transported by parents or guardians. We genuinely care about the community we serve. My goal is not just to run a business, but to be a responsible neighbor who contributes positively to the area. I'm committed to operating in compliance with all city, state, and licensing regulations and to maintain open communication with both the city and our community. Thank you for your time for considering our request, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I just have a question. Okay, I noticed that some of the concern was regarding a privacy fence around
Yes.
the property. How do you plan to address that?
I do plan on replacing the fence. I was hoping not to have to do it right away, but if that is a concern with my neighbors, I'm more than happy to do that.
And so what kind of fence would you have in mind? Somebody was worried about a hurricane fence that they could poke things through and tease the dogs.
My guess is that it will most likely be a 6-foot wooden fence, or if it's a chain link 6-foot fence with privacy slats.
Okay.
Good.
Maybe it was my misunderstanding. Did you say you'd only operate during summer hours?
For school age children, we only accept them during the summer.
Oh, gotcha.
We operate year round, but we don't take school age children during the school year, so they won't be coming back and forth.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Go for it, Kevin.
Thank you. So you might have heard my question earlier as far as the possible increase in kids.
Mhm.
Is that gonna happen?
I'm not sure because it'll be up to the fire department whether they're gonna allow us to have more kids or not. If we did, I would assume that it'd be like up to 2 to 4 kids. So not a lot.
Okay. Right, and well, this goes back to my other question, I guess, as far as it not being, it's a single family dwelling right now.
Yes.
Somebody's living there?
I am.
You are, okay. I know in one of the letters, I believe there was, talk of dog that's presently there getting out.
Yes, I have a 20-pound Boston Terrier that digs under the fence.
Sure.
The fence is up. It's not a great fence. It's made out of 4 different types of fencing, but it is up.
So like, my question really goes to, since you won't be using it as a residence,
Right, my dogs will be with me.
so they
at my
won't
new
be on the
residence.
property.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, yeah, I mean, my question was about a fence and that. Too. All right, thank you.
So currently you're not operating your facility at this location right now,
No,
as you
it's
say,
downtown.
yeah. You're currently living there. So how long after, if we granted the CUP, would it take you to say move there?
I'm
Or-
assuming to make all of the improvements to the property, it's gonna be 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Please come for Kathy.
So another concern was, it said that there's some people that have night shifts and they're worried about the noise from the kids playing during the daytime when they're trying to sleep. Where would you put the playground equipment in your
So the
back?
playground will be in the backyard, but we do have, the kids do follow a schedule, so they're outside for an hour a day.
Okay. What hour is that?
The toddlers are out from 9 to 10, and then our preschool classroom goes out from 10 to 11, basically.
So from 9 to 11,
Yeah.
there's gonna be 10 or so kids out in them.
9 to 11, there would be 5 kids out.
Kids out.
Yes. And then our preschool classroom has 14 kids, so.
Ringing the.
So you were talking about, so you're looking at a thought process of 2 to 3 months to get the improvements and stuff done. But yet you stated that you were hoping to have longer to deal with the fencing, or is the fence part of
I
that?
was hoping that I could fix the fence and make it usable until we could replace it. But if that's a concern, then we'll just replace it.
Because I mean, I guess just as a mom and a grandma, I just kind of look in terms of, the photos that we have seen on the fencing
Right.
and everything. There's just significant concern from a public safety standpoint. Kids, because I got a 2-year-old home right now.
Right,
Yeah,
and that
turn
is
your
something
back
that
for-
Health and Welfare would look into and
Yeah.
make sure that it's safe before they license us.
Turn your back for 2 seconds.
Go for it, Kevin.
So, and I know in some of those photos, there's, vegetation around the inside of the property.
Mhm.
Would that stay Cause I know that we've talked with other, at-home daycares with obviously shift work around, and that was one of the things, that was used as far as noise dampening, for neighbors and things like that.
Inside my property, there is a pine tree. There is some like, the oak tree is kind of taking over on one side and has sprouts that are coming through. But most of the vegetation property or pictures are from the neighbor property.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Well, and with that, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We will open the floor up to public comment. You can just state your name, your city residence. You don't have to state your address.
Carrie Kelly, I live in, just so you know, I live in the house that is south of this residence. My comments around the dogs were not just the dogs at that residence, it's at our residence and the other neighbors' residence. We all have, a lot of us have animals as well. And so making sure that those animals have no access to children, those kinds of things is important as well. Comments around fence, the fence clearly is in poor condition. It is a safety hazard with or without children. I think my other comments are, the condition of the house, the fence, the yard, the facility. My concern is that it is improved upon as required and that is kept up with as required, because currently it has not been. Being a member of the community, that this will impact the entire neighborhood. So we are in opposition. There's our family and a number of folks signed a letter that we sent in. So it would be a huge impact to our property and our house, our residents. It would be an unfortunate, likely we would have to move out of the county because of that. So anyway, again, my main concern is impact to our residents and our quality of life there. But it is concerning that the poor condition of the facility and making sure it's kept up on. It's not very neighborly to do this and then delay putting in a fence or any improvements just to make sure that she can move her daycare there. It's unfortunate for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Steve McCullum and I live at 3428 8th Street, which is one house down from the Weston's property. My big concern is the traffic. So when you talked about traffic, what you didn't mention was the fact that the school buses use 8th Street to access Centennial School twice a day. Because of the convenience store at 8th and Brighton, the traffic up and down 8th Street is pretty significant. And a lot of that traffic is at a high rate of speed, much higher than the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. There are no sidewalks, even though she says that the kids won't be coming, but their kids will walk up and down that street coming to and from Centennial School on their way home or to the school, and after school activities are constant. The neighborhood people walk up and down that. So to have a daycare, a commercial daycare in our neighborhood actually increases the traffic. And I understand what the pictures show, but there really isn't a place for people to park, for people to pull over and pick up kids. I've lived in a neighborhood with a daycare before, and they were old, established commercial commercial buildings that had adequate parking and drop off and pick up lanes. And so that's my real concern, is that you're going to increase the traffic when the traffic is already at a substantial level. Then not only do the school buses use it, but the commercial drivers use it, because they all stop at the convenience store, and then they come up and to get onto Burl to then use their route. So we have semis up and down that street multiple times a day and deliveries. So, like you said, it's the increased traffic, and she says only 13. Well, 13 plus kids, she says 20. So if you multiply that, 20 cars a day dropping kids off and picking up, that's 40 trips that you've added to the residential traffic load for it. So that's my real big concern. And as Carrie pointed out, the property, if you look at it, behind the property is nothing but weeds and cheatgrass that's knee high. The fences are falling down. It's not well maintained. So is it gonna, how much landscaping is she gonna do? There are a whole lot of questions that need to be answered that nobody's really addressed, it seems like. Anyway, I'd just like to state my opposition. Thank you.
Public comment, come forward.
Well, my name's Kyle Riggers. I live directly to the north, next to Cami. First and foremost, I don't want to discourage a daycare. We've had to use one a lot, over the years. So her business and all that, I don't want to discourage that at all. But I will second Steve's comment with the traffic. The Centennial School is right around the corner, so we do got a lot of bus traffic. We do got kids that walk up and down the street. And, we took our kids to Wonder World, and they had a lot of parking, and it was still a chaotic zone. Granted, it's a bigger facility than what Cami will have, but that's my concern, is just kids walking, people backing in and backing out. Also, it's minor, but I have water shut off valve, that's really close to her concrete pad. So it's not if, it's when somebody runs it over, what's my liability, with that? Like, how does that work? And I know the city has a right of way, but I have grass all the way to the pavement. I don't have the nicest yard in town, but I do try to keep it nice, and people are gonna use it to pull in there. I just know they will. So, what kind of liabilities do I have to be concerned about? And, if it was 8 kids, then really it wouldn't be a big issue for me. But, if it's 25, then like Steve said, traffic could be a concern. And it's a busy corner during the school year. I mean, it really is. A lot of traffic there, and people speed up and down that road. The stop sign's right there. And that's another thing I wanted to address is, there is city right away, and where the bushes might need to be cleared out. Like, how close are people allowed to park to cover up the stop sign? That could be a concern too, if there's multiple people stop to get their kids. But, it doesn't sound like there's a ton of traffic, not like a Wonder World type scenario, but anyway, that was all I was concerned about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other comment?
My name is Elizabeth Roscoe. We happen to live at 731 Burl. And for clarification, it is not an empty lot. It contains fruit trees, walnut trees, an iris patch, and a garden patch. We are to the west of the proposed daycare center. My concern is also with the increased traffic, the increased safety risk to pedestrians using the sidewalk along Borough, having to cross the intersection of 8th Street and Borough. Parking for drop off, pickup. If the family parks across the street, kids are gonna run across the street. They're notorious for not looking before dashing between two cars. Increased safety risk to the children and the parents who dash out and try to snatch the children back to safety. I'd like to draw your attention to the city zoning code 37.20.4, surrounding property not adversely affected. You've heard concerns about property owners adjacent to the daycare center having their property adversely affected. One of my concerns is, will our property value be decreased because of a commercial entity adjacent to our property lines? My concern also is the fence issue. Kids are notorious for liking to lob things over the fence. We are, like I said, just west of that property line. When we go out to do yard work, we often find golf balls. I found a baseball, I found a softball, I found children's balls, I found a football in our yard. So I think that is adversely affecting the quiet enjoyment of our property, especially with the increase in traffic noise and the increase of children outside yelling and screaming. They're going to do that, but it adversely affects all of us who are trying to, like I said, quietly enjoy our property. The parking issue with pickup and drop off also is of concern to me. Parents are probably not always going to be able to take turns, so they're going to park along the street and they're going to be out in the street. The street is relatively narrow. Right now, two cars going in opposite directions can pass each other, but if you've got cars parked on the side, you've narrowed and created a bottleneck. You also have people parking on the property of adjacent homes in driveways. While we don't live adjacent or on 8th Street, we have had people park in our driveway when they've gone to Centennial School or different activities there. I don't want to see that happening to people living on 8th Street. Most of my other concerns have already been addressed. So I thank you for your time.
Is there any other comments?
Am I too late?
No. Public comment is still going on.
Sorry, late, work, just got out of work, corner of 8th and Borough. Mike Kelly, been there for 21, 22 years. Raised kids that we dealt with the issues of getting them across that street. It was just Monday, I stopped an individual, high school kid getting out of school that was doing 40+ miles an hour down that same street in front of the said individual that's doing the proposed daycare center. Her dog is a known issue that has not been addressed. So it makes me wonder, if you can't maintain a dog, how you're gonna maintain 13 children or upwards. One of her previous dogs was ran over on said street. Her other dog is on Zeus's friend, which we're all part of. And we do our best to try to take care of the little Boston Terrier bulldog and return it to her with no real recourse on her end. She has not maintained her fence, not maintained her property in the 10+ years that she's lived there. Being a neighbor, I see it firsthand. So just concerns of what that's gonna be entailed for as far as a pet owner myself. And do I need a privacy fence? Is it shared with her, or how do I protect my kids, my dogs? I know kids, we all have kids, we've raised kids. They put hands through fences, they throw stuff over fences, they feed dogs, and it's then the individual's perspective of whether the dog was aggressive and or bit the kid, which we don't want. But in the same token, we're committed, the group of people here, went around the neighborhood with that letter, making sure everybody understood what this meeting was about and trying to make it. And that being said, everybody opposes, everybody there is committed to living in that area, even though the city struggles trying to maintain said traffic off of Bryden onto Burl, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with, but we get the overflow. And by that, I mean a 20-mile-an-hour school zone is no longer 20 miles an hour, it's 40+ miles an hour every day. So you put 13 kids on a one, speaking to the individual here that says it's a shallow street, it's very shallow. And the individual that lives at said house has upwards of 4 to 5 cars at any given time. So everybody parks in their designated parking for a residency, not a commercial. And that being said, if you try to do so, it's gonna be pretty tight and the traffic is gonna be horrendous for kids that do live in the area trying to get to Centennial. There is no sidewalks, there is no crosswalk, there is no lights. And now you're gonna introduce 26 more vehicles. So big concern for me. Definitely oppose it. I don't know if that's what you want to hear. But hopefully more to come from, sorry, I didn't get the beginning of it. Maybe some of this stuff was addressed. A lot of individuals, when we went around the neighborhood, weren't able to attend, whether they're older, vacation, it is June, graduations and everything. I don't know how they get their voice heard other than signing our letter, so. I believe there were some questions or some responses, sorry if I'm asking questions now, but to the response to the lilacs and us trimming our lilacs along 8th Street.
Your property.
Yeah.
Oh, you can address it if you'd like.
Yeah. I'm asking, was that brought up?
Public Works just pointed out that they were hanging over to the right of way.
Okay. And so with no sidewalk or whatever, where would the zone, you have to get a hold of zoning, is that correct? I would,
Or,
for the trim back?
It's Public Works.
Public Works.
Public Works.
yeah,
Yeah, because we do maintain, we don't want any obstructions for school buses, which is usually the people that are said, the ones that show up and ask us to trim the lilacs back.
yeah. If you called Public Works, they could come out and mark the right of way line, so you could see kind of like what that parallel would look like, or where we should trim it back from.
Okay. And then was there any other issues with 737 Burl as far as proposal? Okay. Because we're willing to we work with all of our neighbors, so we're trying to do our due diligence and be the good neighbor. And the fencing issue is another one between said two properties. And whether that is ours to address or hers to address, we have a chain link fence, which I don't believe will be in compliance for a said daycare. The other fence in question is privacy cedar fence. And at one time, the last resident there that lived with individual purchased all the cedar for repairing it and then was no longer a resident there, so the cedar disappeared. So we were working together with him to try to fix that fence, but never just panned out, so. Thank you.
Is there any other public testimony?
Yeah, Steve Sander. I just live just around the corner of that Airway and 8th. I think everybody kind of answered my questions about the traffic. Being there for 38 years, I've noticed in the past 5 years that Airway is getting more congested. There's kids now that school's out. There's more kids. They got these big 4-wheel drive trucks, side by sides, and even the 4-wheelers. And I'd be in the backyard and I hear these trucks come by and they're not going 25. Like they're saying they're 20 or a 20-mile-an-hour zone turns out to be a 45 to 50 mile an hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we allow the applicant to respond? If you'd like to, you don't have to, but
Um,
oh, Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, I forgot that part. Dawn, was there anything else that came in beyond what you've already sent us? Or
Nothing.
anything called in?
Nothing has came in, but I just need to confirm that you guys received the 10 documents that were sent in the packet and then the 2 emails that came after.
Yes. Now you give it, sorry.
Worries. I just wanted to explain how I just had a question about the written comments. There was mention about a letter that was signed by multiple people, but I didn't see that in the packet. Is that?
It was on our,
We saw it.
it was.
Yeah,
we saw it, yeah.
I recall that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I saw
There's
that.
put it in the first email. That was received.
I just wanted to explain how our staggered drop off and pickup works. So, we do have about 8 to 14 cars come in and out every day, but they have specific times that they drop off and pick up. So at any specific time, we only have 2 to 3 cars that can pick up and drop off. So there's not a lot of congestion. So I just wanted to explain that.
Do you know, when, because there was mention, and obviously I don't live in the neighborhood, there was mention of when the buses go through that neighborhood. So what is the time that the buses actually go through that neighborhood, like 8 to 3 or 8 and 3?
I think about 3:30 is when the busing goes through. And then in the mornings when school starts, it's probably 8:30.
It's around between 8 and 9.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jay.
So what is your plan for the additional parking, like as far as how much square footage?
It is in the plan that I gave. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the square footage, but it basically is more than half of my front yard in.
Section of.
20 feet of the current front yard on 8th Street.
Right, how wide?
I think it's 20 feet wide.
20 feet by 20 feet.
It's 20.
It's on the map too.
I know, yeah, the depth.
Oh, there's the diagram, yeah. Okay.
I saw it at one time.
20 by 35 is the proposed additional parking area that was included in your packet.
Oh, yes, okay.
So I noticed in the picture, you have your carport and you have several rigs there, but on the right-hand side of the carport, you had like a horse trailer and another pickup. Would they still be there or would they?
No,
I
all
haven't
that
heard
stuff
that
is my
addressed.
personal vehicles. So I'm a single mom. I have 3 kids to drive.
Okay,
So there's a lot of vehicles.
so that will be your personal spot?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
And then can I ask, no, and I don't know if this was me reading into some of the letters of support in our packet, such as some of the comments from like, the manager at Idaho Stars. Is your daycare like income based or anything like that, or?
I'm a sole proprietor, but I'm part of Idaho Stars, which is they have a quality improvement program. So we work with the state and health and welfare to make sure that we have high quality care.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I have another question. Are you gonna do any remodeling to your home to convert it to a daycare?
So I had the fire department come in and look at what I proposed. And so they basically approved what I had. Is the only thing that has to be changed interior in the home would be that the basement window turned into a fire exit. And then they said I don't actually have to remove the wall. I could just remove the door and the door frame from that little room to make it a fire access. So that's the only thing that we'd have to change in the house.
And then you're currently licensed through the state, I assume at another location. Do you have to do anything licensure wise to move your facility into
Yes,
this
we go
location
through
like Bull Hill?
relicensing.
will they come in and do a physical inspection of the
Yes.
premises? Okay.
So the fire department will come in and do a fire inspection and a building inspection. Health and welfare will also come through the building and make sure everything's safe and secure inside and out.
Well, thank you. Commission will offer it up one more time. Additional questions before I close the public hearing?
It's not for her, they're, so it's for staff.
Um,
Oh, I didn't mean to make.
She's getting her steps in.
So, I know she talked about the fire department approving all that stuff inside. But I know in the past that we've imposed or, required, stuff to the property itself, like fencing and vegetation and all that
And
stuff.
so you guys can, so as you go through your deliberations, and work through the criteria, you can impose additional, conditions of your approval.
Right.
So as, we talked about and was in the staff report and in the photos. So normally a fence is not part of the conditional use permit, right? But there's been lots of talk about the fence. The health department, when they do their inspection, they do check for a fence. But my understanding from, Bonnie Waldemerson at Public Health is that it has to be like 4 feet, and then there are rules regarding the slatting and the diameter that can fit through the slatting. But it's not required to be like a 6-foot tall privacy fence. So if, as part of your deliberations, the commission wanted to require something like that of the applicant, to mitigate some of the concerns that have come up from the neighbors, you could definitely do that. And then as part of public health, like I also mentioned before, as part of their inspection, they request information from the city asking if the zone is appropriate for the use and if a conditional use permit is part of that. And again, Bonnie did confirm with me that they do check for things such as that if there were conditions of approval on a CUP.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a
Actually,
question.
I'm not quite done,
Oh, all
sorry.
right, go for it.
My question really went to, after that, like, we're done here and suppose it's approved with these conditions X, Y, and Z. Who verifies that's all being done?
The fire department would.
Oh, so they would have our list of requirements and, okay, good.
Yeah, and then more so, and in this specific case, since you will need to pull a building permit to do that window to door conversion, that would be another kind of layer, I would say, of inspection, where there would be additional inspections by the building inspector for that portion. And again, that information can be relayed to him, so that he's also checking to make sure that those conditions are being met. But ultimately, it would come down to fire because they have to actually sign off on the licensure part with public health, and then public health would also be given that information as part of their inspection protocol.
So it actually does occur to me, I do have a question for the applicant, if you're open to it. So you mentioned that you have a staggered drop-off schedule. Would that staggered drop-off schedule have people dropping kids off around time that buses are running through the neighborhood, particularly in the morning?
Currently, yes, because we're not there, but we could adjust that so that there aren't families dropping off during those times.
Okay, thank you.
So I think guess mine's for staff, my question. Again. I like to see Kate.
Maybe you're getting your steps in.
Right,
Okay,
like
yeah.
make stand up.
So there's just a lot of concern about traffic. And is there any way that a sign could be posted so that the semis don't drive through there? That it said in one of the letters it's used as a shortcut. Well, and does per se have a sign addressing that. I'm just wondering if you could do something like that.
I mean, that could be a request made from Public Works. I don't know you guys can't require that as part of first.
No, I know that, but I'm just wondering,
Right? Staff could definitely, make that request of Public Works and be like, hey, is there anything that can be done about this? But ultimately, like, I don't know if there's a way for us to stop people from using public roads in the manner that they want to. Could be something where, we ask Public Works, I know they put out traffic counters, and the speed counter thing, so maybe that's something we can request. It could be something where, we send an email to, the police chief and ask for additional patrol around that area. But I don't know that that would ultimately solve the problem that is currently happening in the neighborhood, but those are things we could request to see if that could
I
be
just see that, I
improved.
just don't like, I see that narrow street and I picture semis going down there. I think that's a real.
Or people barreling down there at like 50.
Well, the 45 mile an hour things too, yeah, so
I think
if
it goes
there's,
in our neighborhood.
yeah, I can see concerns there. That doesn't really affect the daycare, maybe per se, it's the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I mean, neighborhoods can always make that request.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions, Commission? Yes? All right, and with that, I'll close the public hearing. All right, so as the next process, we will deliberate and discuss the relevant criteria and standards, and articulate detailed reasons for our proposed decision. We can, as Katie mentioned, we can put conditions on approval of this CUP, should we choose to do so. We'll do that as we deliberate. So I know we have our relevant criterion standard sheet here. It's probably familiar for most of us. But number one on that list is the proposed use will or will not result in conditions that will tend to generate nuisances such as noise, dust, glare, vibrations, and odors. Or if so, any anticipated nuisances will be appropriately mitigated. I will take discussion on that item.
I haven't found the standards sheet yet.
Oh, I'm looking at mine and
What page is it on?
it should be 38 of the
Okay.
packet.
I'll be
You're
there.
just opening up the floor, Gabe.
Yep, yeah. Opening
Okay,
up
well,
the floor.
I will
It's
go
open
ahead and
discussion.
broach the silence by saying I have some serious concerns, I think, along with the neighbors. I think the fence and, you know, it's like Kevin brought up, we've been through this before with another person who actually already has a daycare, but was looking to expand the daycare. And we placed a lot of restrictions on them of not only having the privacy fence, but in putting vegetation that would help remediate the noise. My biggest concern is, I guess I look at it in terms of, I think the fencing issue is something that has to be addressed as a priority, not an
6 foot tall.
afterthought.
6 feet tall.
Yeah, privacy fence, 6 foot, noise canceling, et cetera, because my biggest concern is in reading through all the letters and listening to the commentary and everything else. It's not the fact that there was going to be a dog on the property. It's what it sounds like is there are multiple dogs around the property.
Right.
And anytime you introduce a new element to a neighborhood, to dogs that are unfamiliar, and especially if you've got a lot of people that are working shift work and things like that, every time one of those cars pulls up and stops, there's gonna be barking. Every time those kids go outside, there's gonna be barking. And I personally, looking at it, if I had kids out in the backyard next to me playing for basically 2 straight hours and my dog was barking for 2 straight hours, that's a serious no-go for me on a personal level. I understand the need for childcare and everything else. I guess I'm kind of in a little different mindset on this one because this isn't the addition of childcare. This is just a continuation of currently available childcare. And so I guess I stand back and kind of look at it and say, is there no other more appropriate location than this for this type of an activity where there are so many things that are, you know, I mean, when you've got this many neighbors saying this is gonna be, you know, tough for us to deal with. I don't know if that level of noise is gonna be something that we can mediate it enough. That's my biggest concern. And like I said, I would have been looking at this entirely different as the fence being primary on alterations, not a eventually down the road.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting around to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I was a question for you then, if the fence were replaced, would you say that the nuisance has been mitigated? If it's, say, a noise canceling privacy fence that's 6 feet, and I'm just spitballing here, I'm not
With
saying that's.
vegetation?
With vegetation, because part of that is, if it does prevent, if it does create a nuisance, has it been appropriately mitigated? And one of the things we can do is put that as a condition to say it's been
I mean, of
appropriately.
course, the traffic
mitigated.
concern is the other major concern. Because I drive I live up in the Orchards and I drive that 8th Street, you know, and you're constantly dodging and I don't really think I've seen semis on there, but I see the delivery trucks all the time, the Coke truck, the beer truck.
They're gonna be there.
Yeah, they're gonna be there and that's gonna be a consistent. And so not having sidewalks, things like that, I just, that street, if there's an extra person parked, it is a pain in the butt to get down that road. I got a girlfriend that lives down there, so. I don't know, I just have serious concerns about item number 1.
Can I ask for clarification then? For Commissioner Anderson? What kind of nuisances are you worried about that this property will generate? Not that are already there, but that this particular use.
So traffic, excessive traffic, so, I do see, I know how things like this work. I do see, parents picking up and dropping off and not necessarily parking where they're supposed to, and especially when the school has events and things like that. As somebody who lives in an area where I live close to the Boys and Girls Club, and I know anytime that they have soccer or softball, which is constant, T-ball right now, T-ball, we get people parking where they shouldn't be parking. So I know that that's just going to happen. It's gonna generate people parking where they shouldn't be and encroaching on private property. And then, like I said, just the noise generation from the dogs. And having, it's not so much, it's having an excessive triggering of the dogs.
So I think as far as the parking aspect, I think that that's probably not a nuisance as defined under our city code. That would fall under maybe one of the other sub areas related to conformance with the comp
Public safety.
plan.
Danger,
Yeah.
Public safety.
Whereas like a nuisance, like the noise aspect of it would be, but as far as what this use would generate. If somebody moved in next door with 6 kids or, you know, of their own, it could potentially generate the same amount of noise and the property owner would have no control over noises caused by other properties. So if you look at what noises this use would generate itself, not the noises that will be generated by other properties, which that would be their
Well, but-
concern.
But, you know, having, you know, I mean, if you're looking at 13 kids, I'm assuming, you know, kind of generally assuming it's gonna be a pretty even split between the preschool class and the others. So you're looking at 6 to 7 children out for an hour in a backyard from 9 to 10, and then 6 to 7 children out backyard playing from 10 to 11. And right now, I have 3 of my grandchildren in my house.
That's not something,
No, but
I mean, we have a noise ordinance in the city
Yeah.
between certain times
Yeah.
and this would be
yeah,
not
within that
outside
time-
of that
I just,
time.
I understand as a neighbor, you know,
Yeah,
if I were on the other end of it and I were a neighbor, I would want somebody asking that question of, you know, especially if I'm working shift work and I'm sleeping through the day, having, you know, 6 or 7 children in the backyard next door screaming, for an hour and doing it for 2 hours straight.
But if,
But if you,
but if the
Yeah.
applicant says they're going to work to mitigate it, then you're faced with the conundrum, do you believe the applicant or do you not believe the applicant? So,
Yeah.
sorry, Shay, I didn't mean, no, please go ahead, I
I
interrupted
get it.
you.
It's, you know, I guess the devil's in the details. It really is, and it's a catch 22. I just, like I said, I think that it would be one of those things that I'd be looking at a better location rather than a neighborhood residential.
I mean, I think too, you have to look at where this is located. I mean, all of the lots there are rather large and the setbacks, they're not as close to their neighbors as, say, like the Normal Hill area. There is a significant amount of space between each of the residential houses. And also it is not on the person that owns that property's responsibility for said neighbor's dog. That is on that neighbor to train their dog to not bark. That is not on the property owner.
I get that.
So.
But I
mean,
also
think-
don't wanna, my property is the exact same size. And if the person next door to me suddenly had 6, 7 kids in the backyard playing, and I mean, I have a neighbor 2 houses down who have a pool. And when they have a pool party, you know, it's loud. You can hear it inside the house. So I'm just trying to, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm just bringing up points that I think we've heard from the neighbors. And that's, I guess, I look at things in terms of, you know, and first do no harm. So,
I mean, I will say, I mean, the proposed use can create nuisances, but I personally lean towards the side of creating conditions that allow the applicant to actually mitigate them. So, you know, that's what we've discussed about a
fence and vegetation.
And I think one of the benefits of having a fence as a condition is it minimizes not just the danger to the kids on the property, but
Exactly.
any potential liability
For
from
neighbors.
neighbors whose dogs may or may not get out. I'm not saying they're gonna get out, but you know, kids can't stick their fingers in there
Through the
and
fence.
dogs can't actually get through the privacy
Yep.
slats. So, I mean, I would lean towards it will create nuisances and the nuisances could be the potential noise. And the hazard to health, but I think there is a way for it to be mitigated. And I would say that mitigation would be a privacy fence.
And it needs to be a specific, maybe a specific type of privacy fence. It needs to be private, I guess.
Solid.
It needs to be solid, a solid
With no
privacy.
gaps.
Yeah, with no get, well, yes, so to
Yeah.
prevent, yeah.
Solid. That's the right word. I know that we have a vinyl fence between us and our neighbors and they have 3 kids. And they have lots of company and I hardly ever hear it like that. But the vinyl fence really.
Yeah, my
numbers the-
mom had PVC pipe at her house, the same, it was PVC, but the same 6 feet. The
6
slats, there was just enough for air to go through, but they were thick sides, so something like that. I
Ours is
think that-
solid. but
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
just,
think solid, especially if you've got, you know,
Oh, for sure.
littles.
Yes,
Those
yep,
little
yeah.
fingers.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about slits that are basically.
But I'm just thinking of what we did with the other one. We also had the requirement of having vegetation that would help buffer that noise.
Wouldn't the privacy fence help buffer that noise though, to a degree?
To a degree, but I mean, I'm looking at things in terms of too, from us. I guess I look at things, if we've made requirements for others. I think we should have some continuity in those requirements, because then they could turn around and come back and say, well, you required it for me, but you're not requiring it for this one. And it's virtually the exact same scenario.
I mean, I can see that, but also not knowing the cost for the applicant. I mean, I
Yeah.
understand they're running a business, but.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you it was 4 or 5 years ago when my mom got her PVC piping and I'll just say
Oh,
it
yeah.
was very, very expensive. Now. I don't know the dimensions of her fence exactly. She got it all ringed around her backyard, but so I just want to be cognizant of the fact that
Absolutely.
if we are putting conditions in place, they're relevant and we are at least trying to be mindful of the potential cost.
We're not dictating the material needed.
Right.
We're just, I
Right.
mean, so the price can
I'm wondering
go.
There is some flexibility.
Close,
Yeah, build
close the
fences.
playground area would be to the nearest house.
I'd say it needs to be all the way around. I mean, like.
Oh, yeah, the fence has to be all the way around the house in my mind. But I was just wondering, talking about vegetation.
Sure.
You know, do you need to put vegetation? There's this one house on 737 Burl. I think that gentleman spoke. That's a little bit closer on that side. But there's their house is right here between this house. I guess that's the south side. I don't know that it's necessary. I'd have to think of it.
We're looking at just,
They have trees there. Those were those trees that were over. The lilac, no, it wasn't the lilacs, it was an oak tree. and that-
That are over.
Overlooking their property that we could see on the pictures.
I think some of them were in the photos as well.
Well, there's already vegetation there, maybe.
That if fencing is put in, then could that be utilized somewhat for noise insulation, depending on how it's.
And if there's already a fence between her property and that property, but if it's only one of those little fences, hurricane fences, I don't know what you call them. I think she would be required to put the privacy fence on her side of the property, the 6 feet tall, in addition to that other fence, so it'd be double fenced. That's, would be my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see, so we've got fencing. I mean, technically, we haven't taken a vote on the fencing yet, but. Do we all feel okay with, as a condition, requiring some sort of, I'll call it shrubbery, but shrubbery. Are we okay with that? Feel that's necessary with a fence?
No.
For the last one that you're referring to, I think the primary concern about the shrubbery there was that there was another property that directly abutted the playground area. And they, other than the fence, there was no sound barriers. And so they were really close to that area.
That was a budding shop, was not a home or a yard. It was the filthy backyard that he claimed he was going to clean up and use.
You talking about the prior, the
Uh-huh.
prior application?
Yep,
Okay, just making sure.
but he had his shop back there and then had a bunch of stuff in the backyard and we still put that provision on that they needed to add.
But
Shrubbery.
there's no. I didn't,
I don't think the shrubbery is necessarily
No.
needed.
I,
I think the 6 foot no gap fence would be sufficient.
No gap, yeah.
so, but there's no, I mean, on the diagram that was drawn out. Because. Jennifer, you brought up specifically abutting where the playground would be. There's no designation on it not being the whole backyard. There's no cutout inside the backyard that would designate where the playground would specifically be. That's on page 40 or 10 of 40, I'm sorry. And I'm looking at.
You're looking at the diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just says fenced backyard.
Which means it's really nice, big backyard.
It's nice being there.
But yeah, I mean, that's. And I don't think, I mean, when we're talking about having vegetation or shrubbery, that we're not talking about doing a private defense all the way around and then on the whole inside of the fence,
Yeah.
having
I
covering.
think if we had a no
having-
gap, 6 foot no
Having
gap.
some, you know, for the noise.
The backyard is 66 by 103. It's,
Yeah.
it's big. That's a
It's big,
big
yeah.
backyard. Some people's lots are bigger than that. Yeah.
So I would agree with the fence, but I would more put that under number 4. As a mitigating factor to endangering the environment and public health and safety. I'm not sure how. I mean, I guess it would tie into number 1 with noise, but the noise generated by the daycare or by the proposed use is within.
It is within
It's
code.
within code.
Yeah.
It's within, looking at the scope of what we have to view it as, that would be mitigated with her stating that there are staggered drop-offs and the outside time being in the time frame that there's a noise ordinance. Or there's nothing outside of the noise ordinance that would be concerning.
I mean, I think looping this back to number 1 before we get into conditions and where we want to stick them, if we want to put them on. I mean, I think the applicant has proven that they're trying to mitigate the nuisances. So even if it will result in conditions, I mean, for me, the applicant is attempting to mitigate these nuisances. And we can put additional conditions on, as we've discussed.
I also think we may have to look at the idea of putting some kind of, I don't know, or at least recommending a barrier in the front yard to protect the other neighbor from people driving onto his property. As a front yard sprinkler system with a shut off that my may or may not have driven over twice. I've had to replace it twice.
And we require that though, is that within.
Well, the
scope of what
fence
we
could
did?
go clear up to the edge, up to the, what's it called,
The property
Yeah, it
line.
wouldn't
the
have to
property line.
be a
on
heavy
each
duty
side.
something, but I think that I think it is your responsibility as a business owner to protect your neighbor's property from people negatively affecting it. I don't know if that would be something that would be included in your liability insurance. I'm sure that your liability insurance would probably have to cover that if something happened.
Ask Jennifer.
We
for some
can't-
guidance.
Is it,
on that
is it on
particular-
his property or her property?
No, it's on his property.
It's his
Well,
property.
we can't.
No, I'm just saying, if people who are picking up and dropping off kids
It's their
drive
customer.
over that on his property.
Oh,
Because it's right there at the edge of that driveway.
I would assume her liability insurance.
Well,
as a
that's,
business
I don't
owner.
want to assume.
Well, yeah, but there are certain,
So if it was a use that was already permitted outright, how would it be any different?
Well, that's what I'm just,
So because of the intensity of the use,
Yeah.
you're being asked to address the land use and not private matters between neighbors. When it results specifically in that specific issue about, is the neighbor's guests crossing over the property boundaries and causing damage? Because, while this particular use is permitted under a conditional use permit, there are other uses that could be commercial in nature that are permitted outright. And so there would be no ability to regulate the same aspect. So you're being asked because the intensity of the use has been deemed conditioned upon planning and zoning approval. So you just got to look at this use compared to the permitted uses. And does it meet the criteria for approval? And if not, or either way, stating your reasons why.
So I was just looking at this current picture of her house. It looks like the current fence that she has right there goes up to the property line on
it's
that.
not that one, it's this side.
It's the other side.
Yeah, there's nothing
Yeah, so we can't see.
there. There's no fence, there's nothing there.
yeah, I mean, the backyard is fenced.
Yeah, but it's not very. Thank you.
Discuss this one enough, team?
I mean, so, yeah, I mean, that's, are we there?
Yep.
Yeah,
We're
that's
there.
kind
We're
that's
good.
kind of what I was wondering. So, does somebody want to make a motion on number one?
Don't have to make a motion.
Oh, sorry, not a motion. Well, does somebody want to make a recommendation on number one?
So if we just read the proposed use will result in conditions that will tend to generate nuisances such as noise, dust, glare, vibrations, odors. And if so, any anticipated nuisances will be appropriately mitigated. And it's like, Emily, what did you have to say?
The staggered drop off and pickup times, the children playing or there's no,
It's not outside the.
not outside of the noise ordinance. The only thing that would fall outside of the noise ordinance would be drop off and pickup, and if those are staggered, that would be mitigated.
That's would be part of that also.
Part of the noise.
Yep, and we can put that condition under number one as
Big
part of,
one.
as part of the
Okay,
mitigation.
A solid privacy fence 6 feet.
With no gaps, right?
With
Yeah.
no
Okay,
gap.
okay, okay with that?
Yeah, well, 6
I
foot.
believe so,
yeah,
yes.
Mm. Did you get that down?
I agree with Emily though, that kind of fits more under number 4.
You can do it under as many as you want.
Okay.
Boxes.
Then I am fine with putting it under one.
Yes, a condition, but technically doesn't need to go on, does a condition technically need to go under an item, or is it its own section? Sorry,
We prefer to tie them together
Yeah.
okay.
to show your guys' train of thought and how you got to that decision. And so
Well, then we can put it
But I
under
would-
number one.
I think under number one for the noise portion of it, the 6 foot gapless fence,
Yeah, I agree.
because that's containing a large portion of the noise in that.
So we're all good with that?
Yep, staggered drop off.
Yeah, the staggered drop off.
That's
at that time.
mitigation, yeah,
Yep.
okay. All right, well, excuse me, I think that, do we need to vote on that?
No, I think we've all given our
Yeah.
nod.
All right, number two, the proposed use is or is not a public necessity. Or is not justified by the applicant and deemed to be a benefit to the public.
I would say the proposed use is a public necessity and is justified by the applicant and deemed to be a benefit to the public.
I agree.
I would agree.
Especially, and then I would tie in ED 2.2, support partners to mitigate barriers to employee retention. Collaborate with appropriate organizations to help retain Lewiston's workforce. As a reasons. That being a public necessity and justified by that.
Well, and maintaining childcare.
Good job.
And then the only other thing I would tie into that it is it's mentioned in the staff report on the end of page 8, page 9, that one in-home daycare has recently closed. And then there's 2 preschools operating here as part of a daycare or standalone. So, and even the applicant mentioned herself in her conditional use permit application that affordable childcare is a major issue in the community, and obviously beyond the community, but specific to this application here in the community.
Also, the letter of support, I believe, from Idaho Stars indicating
Yeah.
that as well. As well as some of the other pieces that were in the packet in support providing childcare.
And I think we're all in agreement on number 2. So number 3, the character of the proposed use, if developed according to the plan as submitted, will or will not be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located. I mean, this is one where I struggle with.
I'm falling into the will not.
Yeah.
I am with Kevin. Yeah, I struggle with this one.
I mean, it did, the way I look at this from two perspectives. I look at this from the perspective of the community, the neighborhood's concerns, their needs. But I also look at it from the intensity of the use. And if something is super intensive, in my mind, you can't run it out of a residency. So I lean either way on this one, but I lean either way because of the different perspectives and which one I weigh more. That's not a yes or no.
I think my biggest struggle with this whole thing, when it comes to this one, really honestly comes down to the fact that even though we're talking about putting provisions and things like that on it, the fact that there is a pattern of non-maintenance of the property. When you know that there's an issue with, with the dog getting out constantly, not making the effort, because I consider your dog getting out on a regular basis to be, I mean, that's a public nuisance issue to a certain extent. You've got public safety, because you've got a dog running around, you've got kids walking around. So I guess I just look at it in terms of pattern of behavior. And the only thing you can judge future behavior on is past and current behavior. So I guess that's.
But this is looking specifically at the character of the proposed use.
Mhm.
So we're not,
No, but what I'm looking at is the idea of having something like this is to blend into the current neighborhood. We don't want it to stand out and be, like you wouldn't want to put like a giant commercial building in the middle of a residential. That's why it's not allowed even on a conditional use permit. You couldn't put a manufacturing something in there. And so when I look at something blending into a neighborhood, you want it to blend and kind of fit
how
in.
is this not blending with the neighborhood though? If it's still a house.
Yeah.
With a privacy fence
I mean,
added.
I guess the way I would look at it, I guess the question I would look at it is if there's no signage that is a daycare facility and you drove by it, would you know it's a daycare facility?
Yeah,
You would?
no, well, no, I'm.
That's what
I
I'm
get
saying,
where you're
that's what
going.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I
I think that's what they're
that's a good
saying.
point.
So, yeah, is there going to be signage?
So, because I just drove by Tender Care the other day, and there's a big sign, a big playground, and there's 200 cars parked all the way. I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots and lots of
Oh,
cars
yeah.
parked around. And so, yeah, if it is, and so that's what I picture now as a
Yeah,
daycare,
yeah.
'cause that's what I saw. But if you don't have a sign and so it blends in with the community, so maybe no sign,
I think what I
no.
visualize and to give a reference to this is, there's a daycare facility on Brighton. And
Mhm.
it's fairly close to that, Holiday gas station, and I live pretty close to that intersection, but the only way I know that that's a daycare is that it has a sign, I believe it's over the garage or
Mhm.
over
Yeah.
like a covered patio. And so I would look at that as in conformance
Yeah.
with the neighborhood by its usage and the what the abilities being used for. But I also agree with you, Maureen, to a degree that I don't think I don't think number 3 is so black and white that it's literally saying you have to only confide with if it meets the zoning code. I do think there's some degree in there of if everybody in the neighborhood is opposed to it, that does play a part in it. That's what I will say on that. I'm trying to balance
And the one on.
both sides
It's
here.
a lot of commercial. It's not. So it's a little bit different. The Tender Care one, just, I. agree.
Oh, I agree.
It would-
Tinder, Carol,
It just sticks out like a sore thumb.
It does.
But if it was a use permitted outright, if it was a small daycare center.
Use permitted outright doesn't allow signage,
Yes, it does.
or does it?
You're allowed to have signs in residential zones, so that's nothing to do with your zoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, if that, like, if we're going back on that, If it was a use permitted outright. how can we
Use
make-
permitted outright, I think is what, six or less?
Right, but we're not tearing something down and rebuilding a commercial building. It's gonna still
Yeah.
look, it's just, I feel like it's still within what an R2 zoning would be.
And I think it does, and I think it doesn't. at the same time.
Split.
You changed my mind.
You can be split, and that'll be reflected in your reason statement that you're split.
Yeah, we don't all have to agree on everything.
So maybe you should ask for a vote on that.
Yeah, we may wanna take a vote on that. So all those who believe that the character of the proposed use according to the plan as submitted will be in harmony with the area in which it is located, say aye. Aye. All those opposed,
Wait,
oh, sorry.
Four of you guys?
Yes,
I believe so.
I believe so. And then those who say will not, say aye. Yeah, so 4-2. All right, moving on to number 4. The proposed use will or will not endanger the environment or the public health or safety. I think some of what.
Number one,
Yeah,
the fence is going to help.
Yeah.
So I would say it will not with
With
the condition of the
yeah,
fence.
and
And the staggered.
And this,
and the staggered drop off.
I also understand the concerns from the neighbors, but looking at it from what we are looking at for just the land use. This still has to go through the fire department for approval. It still has to go through the state for licensure. There's other things that will happen that would catch any other public health and safety
well,
risks.
and then in the traffic report, I wrote that down. They said it would be a minimal increase to the traffic. That came from the public works.
Yeah.
Public works.
And the shrubbery.
Did we
And
want,
then neighbors, yeah. or-
did we want to
Right.
include the shrubbery?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry,
that's
never mind,
the
sorry, I'm
neighbors.
behind.
We don't
yeah.
I do.
That's the neighbor's property.
Oh, you're talking about the shrubbery already
And-
there?
and-
No, I'm
as-
talking about like requiring
Oh,
more.
On
requiring.
the shoulder,
Yeah.
shoulder
I mean,
parking. I thought the public works would take care of that.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about inside the property. Like we talked about fence and shrubbery on the inside for noise.
I don't need shrubbery inside.
I don't know, I don't necessarily know if it's needed.
Cause I'm the only one. Okay.
Oh, they could do a vote on that too.
I mean, the other thing I will say in support of it will not endanger is, the applicant did say that they were willing to work to stagger their drop offs to avoid when the buses are running through the neighborhood. So I do just want to acknowledge that point as well as a mitigation.
I think I feel better too that they're not staying there, they're dropping their kiddo off
And then,
and
yeah,
leaving and
heading
not
out. Yeah,
parking along the side, and there is a 60-foot. If I remember correctly, Katie mentioned 60-foot right of way, but a 25-foot wide road,
25.
so that leaves plenty of room.
So the other thing that I liked is the fact that school kids will not be walking to and from school.
Right.
Parents are required to pick up their kids and take them to any other activities. And she doesn't have school kids during the school year, so
Yeah.
there will be
Yeah.
no kids walking on the sidewalk from her daycare.
There
Or,
is no sidewalk.
no sidewalk, on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Can I,
Yeah.
ask a question of staff at this time?
I believe
You
the
can go
answer,
ahead, that's
I
fine.
believe the answer is yes, but
What's the question?
Oh, can we require, drop off on the one side of the road? Drop off and pick up on the resident, the
Only on
property
the
side?
property.
So cause I mean, part of endangering the public health would be, you know,
drop off on the right of way.
running, going across the street kind of thing.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
You can't,
Yeah.
I mean, my mother-in-law lives not terribly far away, and I am very familiar with the
At that
discussion as
point,
far
you'd
as
be
speeding.
regulating behavior and not the land use.
Yeah.
And you would potentially be regulating things occurring on someone else's property.
We wouldn't really have an enforcement mechanism anyway, because it's code
Yeah.
enforcement,
Yeah.
so wouldn't it be?
Well, and if they developed their property as required. As far as the parking and everything, and people chose do something else.
Yeah, you can't.
Well, that was
It
my
would be
question.
difficult to require the property owner who would have no control of the third parties.
Sure.
I mean, she could even create rules that say if you park over there, you're banned from use, but it wouldn't necessarily stop that.
Okay, that's,
Would we?
I can understand that. Thank you.
Did mention she'll be putting a parking policy in place. as
Yeah,
well.
she did.
Did say that.
Okay, well then, all right.
Would we need?
Might be
Okay.
something to include in the parking policy, just a little.
Would we need to add any conditions for ensuring that the parking was developed as presented?
It's already regulated through other areas unrelated to the conditional use permit itself.
Okay, thank you.
Speak on that note. When you brought that up, thank you. And I know that we've discussed it in the past, parking lots and striping and things like that. That's something here applicable,
It's more than 5 stalls,
understood,
then it falls under that full parking lot code.
understood, thank you.
It's gonna be gravelled.
Right, no, I got it, thank you.
All right, well, then I think we're in agreement that the proposed use will not endanger the environment.
So, I mean, anybody,
Number 5, the proposed use will or will not be in substantial conformance with the comprehensive plan.
A bit of. Yeah. Katie showed that. In that use, that's low density and then daycare will be.
say, it's will,
Say this.
according to, section 37-36. Rent 2. Like it falls under, like if it's allowed outright. So,
Staff report also included information in their presentation about the comprehensive plan and value 1.3 to balance land uses, 1.3.2 to enable compatible uses, and then again, the ED 2.2.
Numbers, but you beat me too. So, nope, yep.
I knew it was, I knew Jen, she was gonna ask.
I was waiting to nudge you if we needed to, but,
my citation wasn't enough.
all right, then
Just gonna find.
I think we're in agreement on number 5, that it will be in substantial conformance. So number 6, pursuant to Idaho Code 67-6512, the conditional use permit may be granted subject to the ability of political subdivisions, including school districts, to provide services for the proposed use. I think there was any applicable commentary that they couldn't or wouldn't.
I think
All
the staff report addressed the fact that all of the political subdivisions that were relevant.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Services are already provided.
with fire and stuff, having to check off changes and things like that, so they've already gone through and toured.
Is number 7 new? I don't recall seeing this on prior
It is
CUP.
new.
I knew it was not crazy, but.
Thought that was strange.
So the Idaho legislature amended its laws. Technically, this provision is not in effect yet. But for the sake of
putting it in a
Right.
document so you
Because
can
it-
use it.
Well, it could, but it could, doesn't it go into effect July 1?
Yes, it goes
Which
into
means by
effect
the
July
time we
1.
finalize this, it could very
It's a
well be in effect.
2-week period for the CUP to be issued to us and then
Yeah.
2 weeks for the council or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so we technically, we haven't, it hasn't been adopted yet, but
But it's gonna be there.
yeah. And really what that relates to is, it's more for new developments, but it relates to a variety of land use. It's pretty vague and ambiguous on what it actually applies to.
Right.
So for the sake of applying it to all land use applications that it could potentially affect, that's why we're adding it here. And it relates to using surface water and groundwater for irrigation purposes.
Which doesn't really apply
Which doesn't
here.
really apply
So,
here, yeah.
I mean, so I'd say it is in conformance simply because it doesn't apply.
It's gonna be the most applicable for your annexations and some of your
Yeah.
rezones.
So NA.
And well, I mean, I would say is, but
Yeah.
I mean, it could be in a default, so.
And then, it's not necessarily a condition here, but as a reminder, this application is subject to the provisions of City Code 37-20.1. Did you want to address compliance with any of those sub provisions? Relating to, the size of the site is shown to be reasonable for the intended use. Access to the site meets all applicable ordinances. Surrounding property will not otherwise be adversely affected. Off-street parking and pickup drop-off areas shall be provided.
Shay did address B, the size of site, because I wrote down that, she commented about spacings of the
I
home.
think E
size of the
has been
yard.
addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with D.
I think D will be addressed by the 6-foot no gap fence.
Access to the site.
And then access, I think, is also being addressed, and I think part of the staggered drop off.
And it'll also be
the
addressed
parking.
outside of this process
Yeah.
too, so.
And that'll continue to be a requirement that be met, in addition to, excuse me, the CUP conditions, so.
Right, so that's, I will accept a motion to approve, deny, modify. Well, it would be to approve or reasons, approve or deny reason statements.
So I would be willing to make a motion to direct staff to draft the reason statement approving UV 25-2 with the provisions listed. As
And the staggered.
in the staggered draft.
Staggered drop off.
Am I including staggered drop off as a condition of
Yes.
approval?
Just that it's,
Okay.
yeah, that's followed.
Directed everything in the right place.
6-foot, no gap. Yes.
Yes, 6 no gap. And staggered pickup and drop off.
All right, so it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
I heard her. Oh, you got really quiet.
You were
On that. I did not hear you, honestly.
I didn't hear you, but I didn't see, I thought I was looking.
Your voice blends right in.
Well, Kathy and I are simultaneous.
Sympathetic now.
We're zenning on the zone over
Yeah.
here.
We have the experience.
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
it's a very mixed, because it's a balancing act to try and.
Yeah.
And we do appreciate, I do appreciate all your commissioners' deliberations. We do appreciate all the public comments on this topic. So moving on to item number 4, staff commission communications. So is everybody planning on being here for June 25th?
We do have 2 public hearings.
Does look like we have
The
a
June 25th.
schedule on that.
I'm a maybe.
Maybe. I should be here by.
Ditto, I might be a maybe.
Seven is a maybe, Maureen is a.
I'm not gonna be here.
Are you not gonna be here?
That's sometimes, no, I will not be here.
So will we have,
Shh.
because if I can't make it, there's a good
How
chance
are
I may not be
you?
able to make it.
So that would be,
I'm not strong, like, I should be able to, but I'm a possible maybe. So.
I mean, for me, it would be if I'm sick.
Is
I'm gonna be out of
Zooming
town.
an option?
Hmm?
For anyone?
No, because
Um,
I'll be out of state.
You'll be out now, okay.
I would, if I'm not gonna be here, that means I'll be on the road, so probably not. But I, like I said, I should, but I might be.
And then,
Okay, so the other four, you gotta show up.
I mean, as far as I know, Cindy will be here, but
Yeah.
she's not
Yeah,
here, so I
that's
can't
pretty
confirm.
Yeah.
The only one to confirm.
All right, well, with that, I will take a motion to.
Oh, and then one other thing, sorry, I forget, it's just like,
Katie.
they're distracting me. The other thing is also on, June 25th, we are having our employee barbecue, from 11 to 1 at the firehouse, and all boards and commissions are also invited to it.
And the West Commission.
All the boards and commissions are also invited to join us for lunch.
We've given a flyer.
I see that. Very nice.
Please refer to said flyer. It has the details. Okay, I think that's it. So we have the 2 public hearings. Okay, that's all I got.
Take a motion to adjourn, commission.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you for your work today.
It was a hard one.